It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Richard Fletcher. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Douglas, hello. I'm very good. Thank you for having me on. Excited to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Your bio is very interesting. I did want to ask you right off the bat. When I always see this, I always get curious. It said you used to be a professional gambler. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, there's a reason I used to be one, and I'm not still one because I wasn't a good. I didn't say it doesn't say in my bio I was a good one. It just says I was a professional one. It's like, I did a lot of different things, but I ended up mainly I did some poker, some online poker, but mainly I did a thing that was, without wanting to get into all the nuts and bolts of it because we'll talk all night about it, but it's kind of similar to how you might trade on the stock market, like buying and selling, but with horse racing odds before the race, or guarantee myself a profit regardless of who won. So I used to do that, and it was quite good during the summer when I was doing it, and then this was 2013, and it just got to the winter, and there was less races available, less money available to bet on, and I just got to the point where I'm like, I'm sat here in front of my screen. I'm not talking to anyone else all day, and I've sat here for like 9 hours with like all these numbers flying around on two screens. I'm working much harder than I ever did in the job, and I'm going a little bit stir crazy because it's just like me and talking to the cat and nobody else all day. And I'm looking at how much money I'm making, and it's like a really rubbish job. And I go, yeah, this isn't really. When I thought about, like, sacking my boss and the internet dream and the lifestyle and being your own boss from home and all that kind of stuff, this isn't really what I had in mind, So I ended up jacking that one in. I'm afraid it's not quite the glamorous thing you think of, like James Bond walking in the casino with girls on his arm. It's like, yeah, put it all on red or whatever. It wasn't like that, I'm afraid.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because most of the time when I see professional gambler, or used to be professional gambler, they tended to be a losing gambler, and that's why they don't do it any longer. So it's not something that's not a professional gambler. That's someone with a bad habit. That's someone with a bad habit, right? Exactly. I know there are people that make a good living doing those poker tournaments, and I'm in Las Vegas, so that's like the epicenter of gambling for the world, or the United States, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I was a profitable gambler, just not profitable enough for what I wanted.
You do see the downside of it all here, the sort of sad part about it. And particularly I see the elderly getting their Social Security checks at the first of the month and going straight to the casino with it. And I think that's sad. I think that's just very sad.
It is, yeah, especially those people who are there just like feeding the machines and pressing the button and watching the lights spin around. It's like you're not playing with anything else. You're just kind of doing that all night, waiting for the machine to give you a little token back or something. That never made any sense to me at all. So yeah, I agree. It's totally very sad. Okay,
so how did you come up with your magic formula that you're talking about on your mind?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we went off track before we even started, didn't we, Douglas? We're off a tangent.
That's all right.
Yeah, well, kind of a long story, which I won't go into massive detail on, but I was a dating coach before I became a marketing coach. And I went through, over probably the course of about a year, 4 different iterations of my website and my offer and who I was talking to before I finally came up with, okay, something that actually worked, that guys were connecting with. And that process was very instructive. And I realized that after a while of doing that, I was in all these other people's Facebook groups, giving people advice, just because I found it interesting, really, on like kind of what to do with their marketing, how to stand out from a crowd. And I got to the point in, mid 2018, so I'll get 2.5 years ago, where I thought, why don't I just start my own group, and I can say what I want. I can, have whatever discussions I want. I don't have to worry about fitting in someone else's rules in their group or whatever. So I did. And that group grew to like 1,000 people in sort of 6 weeks. And it became clear that those people needed more than me just making the odd post and commenting on stuff. So I created a course for them, and here we are today. At the same time, I just got married, and I just kind of got bored of the dating coaching. So I just did less of that and did more of the business coaching, and here we are now.
What does a dating coach do?
Well, you get multiple different kinds of them, but in my case, I was essentially helping kind of former versions of me, like intelligent guys who had, quite a lot to offer, but weren't able to present themselves in the best way. Just came across as like geeky losers to the girls they kind of wanted to meet, the kind of ones they wanted to get with, because they just kind of maybe get too nervous when talking to them. They just come across in the wrong way, and the girl would write them off. So it's about getting them to present the best sides of themselves. So basically, the girl could see who's really in front of them. Allow them to connect with them, and that's basically that was what I did. You get all kinds of different ones, you get with guys who like teach all the pickup lines to kind of like trick girls into bed and all that kind of stuff. But that was that wasn't really my stuff. It kind of takes guys down a dark alley when you start doing that.
Well, I think taking a shower and cleaning up is probably a good first step, but also I think that there is a lot of catfishing is sort of the common term, but insincerity might be a better term online, where people are portraying themselves 20 years younger than they actually are, or 30 or 40 pounds lighter than they actually are, or $100 million richer than they actually are. And
yeah,
it's difficult to actually find somebody sincere or perceive to find somebody sincere. You're always very skeptical about what you see online. So just give me a quick example of what you would do or what advice you would give to a guy who was, looking to hook up with some girl. Like how to sort of clean it up, how to clean up his profile or make it more appealing.
Well, it would depend on the guy. I mean, the key thing is it's funny actually. The dating advice I gave in the past was not dissimilar to the marketing advice I give today, because it's kind of the same thing. You're marketing yourself.
It really is. Yeah.
How do you? Yeah, and you've got a never-ending pool of thirsty competitors that you're up against, and how do you stand out from all them? So, me at the moment as a business coach, how do I stand out when I'm posting on Facebook or whatever? How do I stand out from the 10 million other business coaches who also want your money? Well, it's not that dissimilar in the dating world. How do you stand out from all those other guys on Tinder or all those other guys in the bar? Well, you do something different, but you can do something different in a really weird way that isn't anything to do with like who you are as a person. And then she expects she's going to be meeting someone else, and you turn up and you're disappointed. Or you can do something that's like authentic and in line with who you are, but is still attractive. And that's kind of the stuff I teach. I mean, I wouldn't want to go into massive detail on that today, because I know we don't have we've got like 15 minutes, haven't we? And we'll end up still be talking about it in 2 hours' time.
Well, okay. So it's not necessarily all about your physical appearance, because I think a lot of guys get hung up on that. They either think they have to be super good looking or super rich, and other than that, they don't stand a chance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys like to play the victim and be like, oh, I don't look like a cover model off GQ. I've not got millions of dollars, so I can't do it. But I've had plenty of clients who do look like a cover model off GQ and do have lots of money and still can't get any girls, or they just get the gold diggers coming in who want the money, but they don't like them. So it's different problems for different people in different situations. You can always find somebody to disprove whatever theory these guys come up with. I can always show you, like, well, look, here's 10 guys over here who, look like they fell out of the ugly tree and hit every branch on the way down and don't have two pennies to rub together, yet have no problems whatsoever. So what do you say about that? Oh, well, it's different for them because, they live in a different country to me, or they're 6'2", or they've got this thing that I don't have. There's always some excuse extra, but yeah, I mean, looks and money it's one thing that a person can find attractive, but the good news is that women tend to be a lot less shallow than we are in terms of, like, there's lots of other things they can find attractive, whereas we tend to be more hung up on looks, which is why we tend to think that they are as well.
Well, that's true. Okay, perhaps a topic for another day. Let's go back to something you said
Maybe.
before we got on here. You talked about a bedroom guitarist and how your systems could help somebody like that. Why don't you explain that one a little bit?
I know. We were talking, weren't we, about how I know a lot of your listeners are musicians of some degree,
yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people. There's there's the cliche of I don't know how well these guys or ladies are doing in life, whether they kind of do the musician side on the background and they have some job they hate, or whether they're a starving musician, the old cliche. Whereas they might be sat there and go, well, how could I make money from doing my passion? A lot of people seem to be doing it, but not me. I realized an example myself. Like I fit the category of a bedroom guitarist. I just like play guitar for myself. Done the odd open mic session, like in the pub or whatever, but nothing serious. And when I was learning guitar, as I was learning, I sort of figured out a shortcut to, instead of just, like a lot of guitarists, they get to the point where they can just strum the open chords, and maybe a bar chord or two if they put a bit of extra time in, but they can strum the open chords and that's about it. And I found a way where I can make someone who just strums open chords sound so much better at playing guitar by just adding a few extra little things in that aren't that difficult. It's like 5% more difficult, but it sounds like 200% better. And I was like, I could create a course and sell that online. I could talk about it on Facebook and see if people want to buy it there. I could run ads to it. I could do, lots of different ways I could do it. But that would be something valuable. And maybe I'd start a YouTube channel where I'd give tips away on how to do these sort of like different techniques and get people to that. Well, that is now a skill that I figured out myself that other people would want to know about, that they might pay money to learn because it's something useful for them. That is how someone could take something that they're good at and turn it into actual money. So I'm sure a lot of these people listening who've like figured out how to play their own instrument, they've got their own style of playing, they've got their own way of doing it, they've got their own shortcuts where they're like, okay, everyone else took 2 years to get to this point, but I only took 6 months because I figured this out. Well, all these things that you've learned, there's people out there willing to pay you money to learn it. It's just, you've got to be able to find them.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Hi, this is John Morgan, Production Supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, so the nuts and bolts of this and what you're here for is online courses that you've developed and created for various things?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple different ways. I mean, the key thing for me is figuring out what it is that you have of value. Like for bedroom musician, for me, it was like that thing of showing the person of, okay, here's how you can really shortcut getting good, to be honest, and like sounding good on a guitar. Right. Instead of taking like 2 or 3 years like most people, you can sound good in a couple of months if you do this. And then putting that in front of people. Now, whether you make a course, whether you coach people on Skype or Zoom or whatever, that doesn't really matter. It's more the fact that you've got a solution to a problem, and then you decide what the best way is to do it. So a course definitely is one way, but for most people who are starting from nothing, I would just be like, add people who fit into your kind of demographic of people you could help on Facebook. So let's say you were doing this example I was talking about playing guitar. Search for guitar groups on Facebook, like as in, like search Facebook for learn guitar or whatever. There's loads of groups out there where people are swapping information and talking about how do we do this and asking questions. Join those groups. Start adding those people in those groups who ask questions as friends, and then posting the answers on your Facebook feed, on your posts. Then those people are going to start reaching out to you and be like, "Hey, Douglas, I saw that post you made about doing those hammer-ons on the D chord or whatever. Can we talk some more about this?" And then you could essentially sign them up as clients, as customers, and say, "Okay, I'll give you, a month of coaching or 6 months of coaching. It'll cost you this much. By the time we're done, you'll be in this position. You've got this result. How does that sound?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, okay." And then they'll send you some money. That's probably the simplest way of doing it, because then you don't have to create a course up front. You don't have to create a website. You don't have to do anything beyond just, get in front of your ideal customers. That's where I would recommend starting, and then people can kind of branch out from there if they like.
How would I do something like that? Let's say as a radio show host. What could I offer?
What are your skills? Obviously, I don't know your skills. Like, are your skills as a musician or a radio host? Or, something you could do is, if you've got a successful radio show or a podcast, and you say, I've got this many downloads per episode, or, whatever the metric is people go by, you could essentially show people how to walk the path that you've walked. There's lots of people out there with podcasts with like 0 listeners. Right. How would they get to the point you're at? You could add people who are online marketers, people in podcast groups. There's loads of groups for podcasting. I've seen them. Add people who are asking questions. How do I grow my listeners? Add those people as friends. Start talking about the answers on your Facebook feed. People are going to message you and say, "Douglas, I'd like to know more about how I'd grow my show." Okay, then you'd have a conversation with our messenger. You filter out the ones who are never going to become customers, who can't afford you, or you just don't like them as people, you don't want to spend time with them, whatever reason, and then convert the rest. And honestly, you do that, you have some sort of high-ticket course that gets them the result. Obviously, it's incumbent on you to be able to have the knowledge and be able to impart that to someone else. But assuming you can do that, you've got something of value for them. You're teaching them something that they want, and you're getting something in return. I could definitely see you doing well with that, as long as you could teach someone how to do what you've done to get to your point. The question I would have for you is like, do you think you could do that?
Yes and no, I guess. Or maybe an optimistic I don't know at this point, because I haven't really thought about it. But the one thing is that I would feel bad to take their money and not really be able to guarantee any results, because they could do exactly what I do and get nothing, no results at all. There isn't a guarantee for that. On the other hand, if somebody pays to advertise, there's no guarantee you're going to get any sales either. Nobody guarantees that. You can pay for thousands of dollars for a 1-minute spot on a popular show, and nobody buys your product. And they're not going to guarantee anybody will. They're only going to guarantee that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is it worth spending the money on the Super Bowl ads? I've no idea, but it's a big risk. But you don't get your money back if you don't get it. But yeah, I think what you're saying is that's something I would expect a person of integrity to say. I would feel bad. I don't want to be scamming people. I don't want people to be giving me lots of money and then me not delivering. So you might start off and say, okay, I want to show some people how I've done what I've done and help them do the same thing. But I've never shown this to anyone else before. I've just figured it out myself. And I don't know whether I can teach this to somebody else because I've not been a coach before, or I don't know if I can teach this in other niches. Like, you've got your niche, but maybe it might not work in your process, might not work in another field completely. So I want to test it out with 5 different people in different niches, maybe people of different ages, different personalities, and see what comes out the other end. Normally, I will be charged, if I know once I figured out this works, I'm going to be charging a lot for this because it's going to be really valuable stuff to get to the point I'm at, because I know how beneficial it's been for me. But for you guys who come in first, the guinea pigs, I'm going to be giving you a massive, massive discount because obviously you're kind of helping me out. And in return, if you get the result, I want like a really great testimonial from you. So I can then use that in my marketing in the future. And you would put that out to your audience, and you'll always get some people like the early adopters, the people like on iPhones who download the latest iOS when it comes out, when it's like full of bugs because they want the latest thing, whereas everyone else waits a bit to see if it works. you're always going to get those early adopters who are going to be like, okay, yeah, I'll give this a try. I like this deal. I'm willing to kind of, the people who are more like the gamblers, like we talked about before, actually, Douglas, where, I'm willing to take a spin on a roulette wheel and see if this works out. Let's have a go. And then there'll be other people watching in the background and going, yeah, I want to wait until this is more proven, but I'm interested. And then when you come back and then you give your testimonial and say, hey, it worked, that's when they jump on the bandwagon and they're willing to pay more at that point. But that's how I'd recommend someone starts off, where they're like, I think I can do this, but I'm not sure. You don't need to jump in and start charging like $5,000 for a course immediately. You can kind of take baby steps and see whether you get there. I think you would feel better about doing that as well, because then the person isn't coming into your course under any false pretenses. They know, everyone knows what's going on here.
Right, exactly. Well, to kind of wind this down, because we're sort of running out of time. So these concepts basically can work for almost anything, it sounds like. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean,
your system,
concept,
what I mean.
I mean, there's multiple concepts we're talking about here. The first concept is, do you have knowledge that somebody else would find valuable and would be willing to pay for? Now, in your case, definitely yes, just talking about the podcast thing, and I bet you've got a ton of other things that you may or may not even realize right now. For somebody else listening, probably yes, but obviously I don't know because I'm not talking to them. The second goes, well, what is your system going to be to get in front of those people? Now, my personal system is to add people who I think would benefit from my thing and talk about it on Facebook. Obviously, I've got a method behind how I actually make posts and how I do it in the right way, and then when people come to a messenger, I've got a method behind how I talk to people and how I then, have a call with them and, actually get them into my program. But yeah, it can work for anybody, but only people who actually have something of value to offer. It's not going to work for just like anybody who wants like a magic system to put dollars in the bank and they don't have anything valuable to give in return. So,
but what I'm saying, or what I meant, was that if you have, it doesn't matter, the product is sort of less significant.
No, oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, the product is much less important than the end result. And for anyone who's planning to go down the coaching sort of route where you're like, I'm going to teach somebody else something, I would generally recommend, instead of creating a digital course where, lots of people can go through it, just try and coach people one-on-one, as many as possible, because when you do that, you're going to encounter lots of different types of people, but you're dealing with fewer people at once. So you've got more time to figure out the answers to their questions and their problems. And what I found, I did about a year, maybe a year and a half of just coaching people one-on-one before I created any kind of digital course, because I was getting so many kind of questions out of left field that I didn't anticipate and problems to solve. I'm like, okay, how do I figure this one out? But once I'd gone through all those and figured everything out, then I was in a good position to create a course for people to go through.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. So you sort of created this course live, if you will. Yeah? Yeah,
exactly. Instead of selling someone a course where it's like, okay, Douglas, go and watch this 2-hour video now and then watch another 2-hour video or whatever. It's like, we'll sit on a call and I'll ask you a bunch of questions and go, okay, this is what you need to do first, Douglas. I want you to go away and do this. Let me know, messenger you when you're done, and we'll have another call in a week. And then the next week, okay, this is what we're going to do next. And I sort of lay out the road as we go along and figure it out as we go. And then once I've been through a bunch of different people and a bunch of different niches and got them to the point where they want to be at, I go, okay, I now know the process that can work for anybody. So now I can create videos or training materials that people can follow and remove myself from the equation because I'm good enough to be able to do that now. But in the first place, I had to kind of figure out the problems as I went.
My guest is Richard Fletcher. Do you have a website you want to give out or anything, Facebook link?
I do, yeah. I mean, if you search for me on Facebook, Richard Fletcher, you'll find me. You can find my profile and see what I'm doing there. But my website is magicsourcemarketing.com, and you can find all my stuff on there. There's a link to my Facebook group as well if you want to join that. But yeah, a ton of stuff on there. So have a look around, plenty of blog posts that go into more detail about what we're talking about today.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on. I know we could have gone on, and in fact, we went over. That's all right.
We could have talked about 3 hours more. I'm sure.
I think so. I think without
Joe Rogan style,
without any problem at all.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on. It was
thanks for having me.
Nice.